The ticket. Inspector scolded the mentally handicapped girl. The orange cat rushed to protect her. What happened next surprised everyone. The rumble of the 7:42 a.m. commuter train was as familiar to Lily as the rhythm of her own breathing. 5 mornings a week, she stood on the platform at the small Maple Park station, waiting for the silver train that would carry her into the heart of Chicago. And 5 mornings a week, Leo was right there with her, a comforting weight inside his sturdy blue carrier. Lily was 23, though her wide, trusting eyes and the gentle cadence of her speech often made people assume she was younger. She lived with a developmental delay that meant some things took her longer to learn, and navigating the complexities of the world required careful routines and familiar paths. Her job, assembling intricate component kits at a sheltered workshop called Bright Futures in the city, was one she performed with meticulous care and quiet pride. The train journey was the longest, most independent part of her day, a responsibility she took very seriously. Her guardian, Mrs. Peterson, a kind woman whose own children were grown, had helped Lily practice the route countless times. Walk the 6 blocks to the station, buy the correct zone ticket from the machine, using the pre-loaded transit card Mrs. Peterson kept topped up, wait by the 3rd bench, board the 2nd car, and find a window seat if possible. And always, always keep Leo securely in his carrier, tucked safely by her feet. Leo was Lily's shadow, her confidant, her fiercest protector, all wrapped in a coat of vibrant orange fur. He wasn't just a pet, he was family, the most constant presence in her carefully structured world. He had come into her life nearly a year ago, a small miracle she'd stumbled upon, and their bond was immediate and absolute. Now, the soft weight of his carrier handle in her hand was as essential to her morning routine as brushing her teeth or packing her lunch. Always a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and 2 oatmeal cookies. Inside the carrier, Leo was usually calm during the journey. He'd give a soft meow when Lily first picked him up, then settle onto the padded cushion inside, perhaps watching the world through the mesh window or simply dozing, lulled by the train's motion. Lily would often talk to him softly, her fingers tracing patterns on the carrier's plastic shell. "Almost there, Leo. Soon we'll be at Bright Futures. Maybe Mrs. Gable will have tuna today." Leo, in turn, seemed to understand her moods. If she was anxious, he might shift restlessly. If she was calm, he purred. A low rumble felt more than heard through the carrier wall. This morning the train was more crowded than usual. A slight delay further down the line meant 2 trainloads of commuters were squeezing onto one. Lily managed to find a single seat near the middle of the car, tucking Leo's carrier carefully under the seat in front of her, making sure the air vents weren't blocked. The air hummed with the low murmur of conversations, the rustle of newspapers, the tinny sound leaking from headphones. Lily clutched her worn cloth bag tightly in her lap, the one containing her wallet with the transit card, her lunch, and a small, smooth worry stone she sometimes rubbed when feeling overwhelmed. She enjoyed watching the familiar landscape slide past the window, the neat suburban houses giving way to industrial buildings, then the denser cityscape beginning to emerge on the horizon. It was predictable, comforting. The train swayed gently, a familiar rocking motion. She could hear Leo give a faint sigh from within his carrier, a sound that always made her smile. He was settled. Everything was going according to plan. She rehearsed in her head what would happen next. Soon, the conductor would come through checking tickets. She would take out her wallet, retrieve the transit card from its special slot, and hold it ready. He would scan it with his machine, maybe nod or offer a brief "morning," and move on. Simple, predictable. safe. Lily didn't always understand nuances in tone or complex social cues, but she was acutely sensitive to atmosphere. Today, the crowded car felt different. People seemed more rushed, more stressed. Shoulders were hunched, faces buried in phones or staring blankly ahead. There was an undercurrent of impatience that made the air feel tight, and Lily found herself unconsciously rubbing the worry stone in her pocket. She glanced down towards the carrier tucked by her feet. "It's okay, Leo," she whispered, barely audible above the train's noise. "Just a busy day." From within the carrier came a soft, brief meow, as if in acknowledgement. Knowing he was there, solid and real, helped anchor her. Whatever happened, Leo was with her. Together, they could handle a busy train. Together, they navigated the world. She took a deep breath, focused on the familiar click-clack of the wheels on the track, and waited for the conductor. The announcement crackled overhead, distorted but recognizable. "Tickets, please. Have your tickets and passes ready for inspection." Lily's heart gave a little jump, the way it always did, a mixture of slight anxiety and the satisfaction of following the rules. She watched as the ticket inspector entered their car from the front, a tall man with weary eyes and a uniform that looked a size too tight across the shoulders. He moved methodically down the aisle, his scanner beeping rhythmically as he checked passes and tickets. His face was set in a permanent frown, and his movements were clipped, efficient, devoid of warmth. He seemed particularly brusque today. Lily saw him snap at a young man whose phone pass took a moment too long to load, and heard him sigh loudly when an elderly woman couldn't find her ticket immediately in her large purse. Each sharp interaction sent a small ripple of unease through the already tense car. Lily clutched her bag tighter, her fingers finding the smooth surface of her worry stone. She carefully took out her wallet, her movements precise as practiced. She slid the transit card from its designated slot. It was blue, with the Transit Authority logo, and Mrs. Peterson always made sure it had enough money loaded for the week's trips. Lily held it firmly between her thumb and forefinger, ready. Finally, the inspector reached her row. "Ticket," he said flatly, holding out his scanner without making eye contact. Lily presented her card. He took it, swiped it through the handheld machine. Instead of the usual affirmative beep, the machine emitted a short, sharp, negative buzz. A small red light flashed. The inspector frowned, looking directly at Lily for the first time. His gaze was impatient. "Card showing insufficient funds," he stated, his voice loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Lily blinked, confused. "No," she said softly. "Mrs. Peterson loaded it. Sunday. She always loaded it on Sunday. It always worked." "Well, it's not working today," the inspector retorted, tapping the screen of his device. "Says you're short. This zone requires the full fare. You owe another $1.50. $1.50? Lily's mind raced. She sometimes carried a little extra pocket money Mrs. Peterson gave her for emergencies or a treat, but she hadn't bought anything this week. She fumbled with the change compartment in her wallet, her fingers suddenly clumsy. A few coins spilled out onto her lap. A quarter, 2 dimes, 3 pennies. 48 cents. Not enough. Panic began to rise in her chest, hot and prickly. This wasn't part of the routine. She didn't understand what had gone wrong. Had the fare increased? Had Mrs. Peterson forgotten? Her carefully ordered world felt like it was tilting. I only have this," she stammered, holding out the meager handful of coins, her eyes wide with distress. The inspector's frown deepened into a scowl. His patience, already thin, seemed to snap entirely. 48 cents? He scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. Not enough money? Do you think this is some kind of charity ride? Everyone pays their way? His voice, sharp and accusatory, cut through the low hum of the train car. Conversation ceased. Heads turned. Every eye seemed to lock onto Lily, pinned in her seat, the inadequate coins resting in her trembling palm. The sudden, focused attention felt like a physical weight pressing down on her. Her face flushed hot with shame and fear. Tears welled, blurring her vision. This was wrong. This was loud. This was not routine. I don't, she began, her voice choked with tears. She wanted to explain, to apologize, to make it right, but the words wouldn't come. She felt small, exposed, utterly overwhelmed. It was Lily's palpable wave of fear and distress, coupled perhaps with the inspector's aggressive tone and posture as he leaned slightly over her seat, that seemed to trigger something primal within the blue carrier tucked beneath the seat. A low, guttural growl emanated from the carrier, startlingly loud in the sudden silence. Before anyone could react, the carrier door, perhaps not latched quite perfectly that morning or jostled loose by Lily's trembling legs, burst open. A flash of orange fur shot out. Leo landed silently on the floor, then immediately positioned himself directly in front of Lily's legs, facing the inspector. He was small compared to the man, but he seemed to swell with indignation. His back arched high, the fur along his spine bristling like a fiery mohawk. His ears flattened against his skull, his whiskers bristled forward, and his tail puffed out to twice its normal size. He let out another sound, not a meow, but a deep, menacing hiss that promised sharp claws and teeth, his amber eyes fixed unwaveringly on the inspector's legs. He took a small, deliberate step forward, planting himself firmly between Lily and the perceived threat. He wasn't attacking, not yet, but his message was unmistakable. Back off. The train car, already quiet, fell into a stunned, absolute silence. The rhythmic click-clack of the wheels on the track seemed amplified, the only sound besides the low, threatening growl rumbling deep in Leo's chest. Every passenger within sight stared, mesmerized by the small, defiant orange cat standing guard. It wasn't just the unexpectedness of a loose cat on a commuter train, it was the sheer unwavering intensity of his protective stance. He held his ground, a small, furry warrior facing down a man easily 10 times his size, his entire being focused on shielding the weeping young woman behind him. Mr. Henderson, the inspector, recoiled instinctively, taking half a step back. Surprise, annoyance, and perhaps a flicker of disbelief warred on his face. "Hey, whose cat is this? Get it under control. Pets belong in carriers," he sputtered, his earlier bluster momentarily deflated by the sheer audacity of the animal. Lily, startled by Leo's sudden appearance and fierce defense, sobbed quietly, reaching down with a trembling hand. "Leo, it's okay," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction, her own fear still too potent. Leo didn't move, his gaze locked on Henderson, his growl unwavering. The standoff hung in the air, thick with tension. No one spoke. No one moved. The passengers seemed collectively frozen, witnesses to a strange primal drama unfolding in the mundane setting of their morning commute. They saw the vulnerable girl, the harsh official, and the inexplicably brave cat, creating a tableau of injustice and loyalty. Then, a voice broke the silence, not loud but clear and steady, cutting through the tension. "Maybe you should lower your voice, Henderson." All eyes shifted towards the speaker. He was a middle-aged man sitting across the aisle, dressed in a simple work jacket, his face weathered and kind. He looked familiar to Lily. She thought she sometimes saw him near the Maple Park station or the small grocery store back home. His name was Frank Miller, a carpenter who rode the same train line most mornings. Henderson turned towards Frank, his face flushing with renewed irritation. "This is official business. This young lady hasn't paid the proper fare, and now her animal is loose." "I understand that," Frank said calmly, meeting the inspector's glare. "But maybe there's a way to handle it without frightening her half to death. She seems distressed." He nodded towards Lily, whose shoulders were shaking with quiet sobs. Frank then looked more closely at Lily, and then down at the defiant orange cat still holding his ground. A flicker of recognition crossed Frank's face. He leaned forward slightly. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice thoughtful. "I know this young lady, and I think I know that cat." Henderson looked skeptical. "What are you talking about?" "I see her around Maple Park," Frank continued, addressing the car as much as the inspector now. His gaze softened as he looked at Lily. "She lives near my sister-in-law's place. Always polite, minds her own business. And this cat." He paused, recalling something. "Yeah, I remember now. It was last spring, maybe early summer. I saw this same orange cat hanging around the alley behind the hardware store near the station. He was in terrible shape." Frank described what he'd seen. The cat was rail-thin, dragging one leg, its fur patchy and dirty, clearly injured and starving. "Looked like he'd been hit by something or gotten into a real bad fight," Frank recounted. "Honestly, I didn't think he'd make it. People mostly just ignored him, walked right past." He paused, looking directly at Lily again, then at Leo, who had finally relaxed his stance slightly at the sound of Frank's calm voice, though he remained protectively close to Lily. "But she didn't ignore him," Frank said, his voice filled with a quiet respect. "I saw her out there, day after day, sitting on the curb, talking to him softly, bringing him little bits of food in a container. Looked like her own lunch sometimes. She'd just sit there patiently, coaxing him closer. Took her weeks, I think. She didn't care that he was dirty or hurt. She just cared." He gestured towards Leo. "Eventually, she must have gained his trust. Maybe got him cleaned up, took him home. I didn't see him in the alley after a while. Figured maybe he'd finally succumbed or wandered off. But seeing him now, healthy and acting like this?" Frank shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "That cat knows who saved him. Looks like he's returning the favor." Frank's words hung in the air. The backstory, delivered simply and honestly, shifted the atmosphere completely. It painted a picture not of a fare evader or a careless pet owner, but of a young woman with profound kindness, capable of extraordinary patience and compassion towards a suffering creature that everyone else had overlooked. And the cat's fierce defense was suddenly cast in a new light, not aggression, but loyalty. A debt being repaid, a bond forged through mutual rescue. The passengers murmured softly, looks of understanding and sympathy passing between them. The initial shock gave way to a quiet admiration for both Lily and her fiercely devoted companion. The narrative had flipped entirely thanks to Frank's timely recollection and willingness to speak up. The revelation hung in the air, potent and transformative. Mr. Henderson stood frozen for a moment, Frank Miller's words echoing in the quiet car. His gaze flickered from Frank to the watching passengers, down to the orange cat now sitting calmly but alertly at Lily's feet, and finally to Lily herself. She had stopped crying, her face tear-streaked, one hand resting gently on Leo's back, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Whatever anger or impatience had fueled Henderson's earlier outburst seemed to drain away, replaced by a visible discomfort, perhaps even a flicker of shame. He saw not just a girl short on fare, but the subject of Frank's story, the quiet rescuer. He saw the unwavering loyalty of the animal she had saved. He saw the silent judgment, now tinged with sympathy for Lily, in the eyes of the surrounding passengers. He cleared his throat, the sound awkward in the stillness. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then seemed to think better of it. Without another word, without checking any more tickets in that immediate area, he simply turned and walked stiffly down the aisle towards the next car. His shoulders slumped slightly. He didn't look back. As the inspector retreated, the tension in the car didn't vanish, but it transmuted into something softer, warmer. A collective exhale seemed to occur. Lily, still trembling slightly, bent down and scooped Leo gently into her arms, burying her face in his warm, orange fur. "Good boy, Leo," she whispered, hugging him tightly. "My brave boy." Leo leaned into her embrace, purring his rough, comforting purr. Then quietly, things began to happen. An older woman seated in front of Lily reached back and gently touched her arm. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked softly. Lily looked up, startled, and nodded shyly. The woman smiled warmly. "That's a very special cat you have there." Before Lily could fully process this, the man who had been sitting next to her, a young businessman who had earlier seemed engrossed in his laptop, leaned over. He discreetly slipped $2 bills into the side pocket of Lily's cloth bag. "For the fair difference," he murmured quietly, offering a small, encouraging smile before turning back to his screen, clearly not wanting to draw attention. Almost simultaneously, Frank Miller stood up from his seat across the aisle. He walked over and knelt beside Lily. "Hey there," he said gently. "Don't you worry about Mr. Grumpy, Inspector. You did good, taking care of this fella." He gave Leo an appreciative scratch behind the ears, which Leo surprisingly allowed. Frank then reached into his own pocket and pulled out Lily's drop transit card from where it had fallen near her feet during the commotion. "Here's your card back. And look," he added, producing a crisp $5 bill, "why don't you put this towards his next bag of treats? Sounds like he earned it." He tucked the bill gently into Lily's hand before she could protest. Lily looked down at the money, then up at Frank, her eyes wide with confusion and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome, Lily," Frank said, using her name kindly. "We Maple Park folks gotta stick together, right?" He gave her a reassuring nod and returned to his seat. Other small gestures followed. Someone passed forward a packaged granola bar. A woman offered a clean tissue from her purse. There were smiles, nods of encouragement, a quiet wave of empathy rippling through that section of the train car. No grand pronouncements, just simple human kindness unfolding organically in the wake of the confrontation. Lily carefully secured Leo back in his carrier, making sure the latch was firm this time. He settled down quickly, seemingly content now that the perceived threat was gone, and Lily was calm. She tucked the money safely into her wallet, her earlier fear slowly replaced by a warm, bewildered feeling. People were being nice. They understood. They weren't mad at her or Leo. The train continued its journey toward Chicago, the city skyline growing larger in the window. The atmosphere in the car had changed. The earlier tension had dissolved, replaced by a sense of shared experience, a quiet acknowledgement of the vulnerability and loyalty they had witnessed. Commuters resumed their quiet activities, but perhaps with a bit more awareness of those around them. Lily sat straighter, stroking the top of Leo's carrier. She felt the smooth worry stone in her pocket, but didn't need to rub it now. She looked out the window, watching the familiar approach to the city, but seeing it with new eyes. Today's journey had deviated sharply from the routine, filled with fear and confusion, but also with unexpected bravery and surprising kindness. She had learned, perhaps, that routines could be broken and that could be scary, but she had also been reminded of the fierce loyalty of her best friend, Leo. And the passengers, along with Mr. Henderson, had perhaps learned something too, about looking beyond appearances, about the quiet strength found in gentleness, and about the profound love and protectiveness that can exist between a vulnerable young woman and the stray cat she saved, who in turn didn't hesitate to save her right back. The train rolled on, carrying its passengers towards their destinations, forever changed by the silent lessons learned from an innocent girl and her fiercely loyal orange cat. The quiet generosity settled over Lily like a warm blanket, chasing away the last chills of her fear. She carefully placed the $5 bill alongside the 2 ones already tucked into her bag's pocket, her fingers brushing against the smooth worrystone. It felt strangely inert now. The storm inside her had passed, calmed by the unexpected kindness of strangers and the unwavering loyalty of her furry companion. She zipped the wallet securely, double-checking the closure, a habitual motion ingrained by Mrs. Peterson's patient teachings. Routines were anchors, and even after the morning's disruption, falling back into small, familiar actions helped steady her. She leaned down again towards the carrier, pressing her cheek against the cool plastic mesh. Leo bumped his head gently against the barrier from the inside, a soft thud of reassurance. "You were so brave, Leo," she murmured again, tracing the diamond pattern of the ventilation holes. "My best, bravest boy." His purr rumbled back, a tactile vibration against her skin. She imagined him inside, curled on his cushion, perhaps meticulously grooming a ruffled patch of fur, the picture of innocence after his fierce display. It amazed her how he could transform from placid companion to fiery protector in an instant when he sensed she was threatened. Their connection felt deeper than words, an instinctive understanding that transcended her challenges and his animal nature. Across the aisle, Frank Miller watched them for a moment, a gentle expression on his face. He remembered vividly that scrawny, half-dead creature Leo had been just months ago, huddled by the overflowing dumpsters behind O'Malley's Hardware, shivering despite the mild spring air, one eye crusted shut, a raw wound on his hind leg drawing flies. Frank, not usually one for cats, had felt a pang of pity but hadn't known what to do. Animal control in Maple Park was notoriously slow, and he figured the poor thing was beyond help anyway. Then Lily had started appearing. He'd seen her from the station platform, sitting patiently on the curb day after day, leaving little offerings of food, never trying to rush or grab the fearful animal, just being present, radiating a quiet calm. He'd shaken his head back then, thinking it a futile, perhaps naive effort. Seeing the outcome now, this healthy, clearly cherished cat risking himself for the girl who'd shown him such unlikely compassion, Frank felt a humbling warmth spread through his chest. Some people just had a gift, a purity of heart that animals recognized that maybe the rest of the world often overlooked. The train continued its steady progress, leaving the suburbs behind, the landscape morphing into the familiar urban sprawl of Chicago's outskirts. Warehouses and factories slid past the window, their brick walls tagged with graffiti, smokestacks reaching towards the gray sky. Lily watched it all, her earlier enjoyment of the familiar view returning, overlaid now with the fresh memory of the morning's events. It felt like watching a movie she had somehow starred in, the scary part with Mr. Henderson, the surprising intervention of Leo, the kindness of Frank and the other passengers. It was a lot to process. She thought about telling Mrs. Peterson. Usually her report of the train journey was simple. Train was fine. Saw 3 pigeons at the station. Leo was good. Today would be different. How could she explain the bad feeling when the card didn't work? The inspector's loud voice, Leo jumping out, the money people gave her. She decided she would tell Mrs. Peterson everything just as it happened. Mrs. Peterson always listened patiently, helping her sort through confusing events, reassuring her when routines went awry. She would understand, and she would be very proud of Leo. The older woman in the seat ahead turned slightly again, catching Lily's eye. "He really seems to adore you," she said, nodding towards the carrier. "What's his name?" "Leo," Lily replied softly, a shy smile touching her lips. "Leo," the woman repeated, "like a lion." "It suits him." She smiled again, then turned back around, leaving Lily with a pleasant feeling. Leo the Lionheart. It did suit him. As the train slowed for its approach to Union Station, the final destination, passengers began to gather their belongings. Briefcases clicked shut, coats were shrugged on, phones were tucked away. The man who had given Lily the $2 stood up, catching her eye briefly and giving another small nod before moving towards the aisle. Frank Miller also rose, stretching his back. "Have a good day at work, Lily," he said warmly as he passed. "You too, Leo." Lily felt a quiet sense of readiness. She checked Leo's carrier latch one last time, zipped her bag securely, and grasped the carrier handle firmly. The train hissed to a stop, the doors slid open, and the familiar bustle of arrival filled the car. People began filing out onto the platform. Lily waited patiently for a clear path, just as Mrs. Peterson had taught her, avoiding the initial rush. When it was her turn, she stepped carefully from the train onto the busy platform, the weight of Leo in his carrier feeling reassuringly solid. The vast, echoing space of Union Station unfolded before her, filled with the roar of announcements, the scurry of travelers, the scent of diesel fumes and roasted nuts. It was usually a bit overwhelming, but today Lily felt different, grounded. She clutched Leo's carrier, took a deep breath, and began walking towards the exit leading to the bus transfer for Bright Futures, her steps steady, her head held perhaps a little higher than usual. She knew the world could be confusing, sometimes even harsh. Routines could break, things could go wrong, people could be unkind. But today had shown her something else, too. It had shown her the fierce, unwavering loyalty of her best friend, a small orange cat with the heart of a lion. And it had shown her that even in a crowd of strangers on a busy commuter train, unexpected moments of understanding and quiet kindness could ripple outwards, turning a moment of fear into a reminder of the good that still existed, often in the most surprising ways. With Leo by her side, Lily felt ready to navigate whatever the rest of the day and the world might bring.